And so people that don't understand this business, they're just like, oh, well, Tim is cheap. Well, no, Tim lives in the real world
Yeah.
where math rules.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Tim Bratz, and every week I sit down with the top influential entrepreneurs in the country to discuss how to leave a true legacy in all things happiness, health, wealth, and wisdom. This is the Legacy Podcast.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Legacy Podcast. Today, I have my buddy Daniil Kleyman here, and he is a real estate developer out of Richmond, Virginia, and somebody that I've known for several years. And we're in a lot of the same rooms and a lot of the same communities. He's an educator. He's got a software. He's got his development side of things, and he's got his finger on the pulse of all that. So I'm excited to talk to Daniil about what's going on in the development world, what's happening with supply chains, what's happening with labor costs, what's happening with projected values, how has insurance, how have interest rates, how have political and economic turmoil and all that kind of stuff impacted the development world. We're going to dive into all of it. So, Daniil, appreciate you being here, brother. Great to see you,
Man.
man.
Good to see you.
Awesome.
Did I see you in Charleston briefly or no? You
briefly, very briefly. Yep.
I ran into you briefly. Yeah.
Yep.
You were
at Patrick's house.
you made a quick appearance and then you
Yeah.
so
I was, I wanted to show face, and at the same time, man, had some family obligations.
look, it's all fine because I'm pretty sure last time I saw you in Charleston, we were stuck in an elevator together for 45 minutes.
Oh man, yeah, we saw each other a little bit too much that time.
Yes, we did. So I'll take a brief encounter with you any day over getting bailed out by firefighters.
I'll tell you what, though, it really built some camaraderie amongst the people, the 14 people that were jam-packed into a 3x3 elevator.
Yeah. I mean, was there a couple of anxiety attacks? Sure. Did a couple of people pee themselves?
Dude, nobody farted,
sure.
right? Nobody flipped out too bad. Nobody had to pee after we were all drinking.
All in all, we did good.
And we didn't get fined by the fire department for being a bunch of clowns.
They looked like they wanted to kick our ass.
No, they were very upset.
Sure. They were not amused. We thought we were hilarious.
Yeah.
They did not share that sentiment whatsoever.
No, different sentiment for sure.
Yeah.
You've been on the podcast before. Your background is in our archives somewhere, but let's give a quick background. How'd you get started? What do you got going on? What are you doing today? And kind of what are some of your goals moving forward?
Sure. Well, so I got into real estate, I don't know, 15, 16 years ago. And I started off doing mostly BRRRR deals. I renovated single family homes. I did some flips, but largely I did BRRRR. I built up a rental portfolio, renovated single family homes, duplexes, refinanced them, added them to my rental portfolio. Then probably 7-8 years into my career, I got tired of rehabbing and I largely transitioned to doing ground up. And the focus has always been on just building up a portfolio. I just want the mailbox money. I just want the passive income. We have a spec home building side to my business where we build spec homes and sell them, but the main thing is always the main thing, and the main thing is always I just want to build up the portfolio of assets that pay me month after month after month. We're vertically integrated with an in-house property management company, and that management company only manages my assets, and we manage everything right now in my rental portfolio, from single family homes and duplexes all the way to kind of mid-size apartment buildings and mixed use projects to larger apartment buildings. And we do a lot of mixed use. I have really cool tenants all over Richmond, Virginia. We have restaurants, ice cream shops, yoga studios, co-working spaces, bars, 2 bakeries opening right now in the middle of their build out. 2 different bakeries. We've got a 4,000 square foot sushi restaurant.
Do you ever negotiate non-financial benefits from any of these tenants? Like, hey, listen, I'm going to come here with my kids every Saturday morning, and I want some croissants with the chocolate-filled kind and a nice tall glass of milk for my little ones.
That would be dangerous. I mean, like they know me, so oftentimes like they'll I don't ask for it, but they'll like when I show up, and because again, like part of the cool part about what we do is when I curate these commercial tenants, I try to put in tenants into our buildings that I myself want to be a client of. So most of these tenants that I have scattered throughout Richmond. Like I patronize all the time. I go to the yoga studio.
As you should, man, giving them
I
business because they're giving you
yeah,
business, and then
yeah.
you want them to stay in business.
I
So
go
you're sending
exactly.
your
I go
people
to the
their
juice
way.
shop. I go to the restaurants. You know, we host a mastermind for developers here in town occasionally, where we fly a few people in and they stay at my own Airbnbs, and then we go out to restaurants in my own buildings. And so I try to give them as much business as possible. And like they know me, they'll try to give me discounts, and I typically fight. I push back against it because like I want to pay full freight. I want them to make money. I want them to be successful. Um, but what I
Isn't
haven't.
that a powerful perspective? Because I feel the same way. Like, I don't know, maybe early on in my career, when I was broke, I'd say, hey man, can I get a discount on this? Can I get a discount on
Yeah.
that? Can I? And I don't know if it was because I was broke or because I had a broke mindset, but I'd always, if I had a buddy who had a business or something, I'd always take the discount. Today I'm like, no, let me pay you in full because I want to support your business. I know what it's like being in business. Like, let me pay it forward and just, keep on supporting my friends who are entrepreneurs and try to patronize their businesses and pay in full and give them more business because I'd rather pay them
100%.
and let them make profits than some faceless corporation or something. And I think that's a powerful mindset.
100%. Absolutely. And I'm just closing something on my computer so that it's not interfering. But yeah, I want them. I want them to be successful. We promote them on our social media channels.
That's cool.
We let our kind of residential tenants know when a new business is opening. Yeah, I want them to do great, and we want them to be there for decades in our buildings because it means they're successful, but it's also less turnover for us. And yeah, I don't, I don't want to go in there and try to save 15% on a juice. I'd rather make good money and
I love it.
have their employees be happy and make good money as well.
Are you okay talking in dollars and decimals of like the size of your portfolio?
Yeah, sure.
How many, like, just give me gross value of your portfolio. Are you at tens of millions, $100 million portfolio
Yeah, I mean,
yet?
gross value right now around 60 million.
Okay. So $60 million portfolio, and you're still developing, and you're still
Yeah.
building, and you're still buying. At what point do you stop doing that? At what point do you have enough? Have you ever asked yourself that question?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I ask myself that question all the time. And kind of a lot of the books I've been reading recently have also been kind of touching on that topic. And I think the question you need to ask yourself before you ask yourself what's enough is, why am I doing it? Right? Am I growing my portfolio purely because I want to accumulate a big net worth and make as much monthly income as possible? Or am I doing it because I enjoy the process, I enjoy the art, I enjoy the ride, I enjoy the creative process. It gives me satisfaction, right? So yeah, if I was purely accumulating net worth and asset value and monthly cash flow, I have enough. I had enough years ago. I have enough passive income right now coming from real estate, where if I do 0 deals for the rest of my life, my family and I can live very, very comfortably, very comfortably. Right. So from that point of view, sure, I have enough, but will I ever stop? No, because this is what I enjoy doing. Like I get true satisfaction out of the creative process and fulfillment out of seeing these projects come to life. And it's not easy. I mean, development is a difficult, time-consuming process that requires a lot of patience, a lot of resources, a lot of problem solving. And I find it challenging. I find it interesting. So my plan is to keep developing, hopefully until I kick the bucket one day. Because I like it.
How have you adjusted your buying criteria or how you run your business as you've become more and more successful? And not saying that you don't need it, but you don't need it, right? Like you don't need to keep on building it. So I'd assume that you'd become more selective in the deals that you do and the types of deals that you do. How has that changed?
Yeah, I mean, my pipeline right now is filled for the next 5 years if I don't buy any more deals. Meaning, I'm sitting on land currently that I am trying to develop that's entitled probably for another 500 units or so. So I mean, I could keep myself busy. So one thing is that I don't really have to have a deal sourcing pipeline, and I don't have to go out and market for deals. I don't have to go look for deals, right? Things lately tend to land on my desk, and if it makes sense, it makes sense, and oftentimes it doesn't make sense, and I don't have to stretch myself to doing a deal that doesn't fully make sense just to keep the pipeline full, if that makes sense.
I think it makes a lot of sense, because a lot of people just need to keep, feeding the machine. And so they
Yeah.
do bad deals, or they do marginal deals or break even deals that also often turn into losses, because they just feel like they have to keep the momentum going. And the activity is not as, you know, you don't want to do that and then do bad deals, because
Well,
I got caught
sure.
riding that train a couple of years ago, and I paid the piper for it for a couple of years of just trying to unwind some things because of it. And so I'm
Yeah.
far more selective today on deals that I do than I was 5-6 years ago.
And that, and that kind of thing comes from experience, and that kind of wisdom oftentimes comes from
Yeah.
having made theirs. It's feeding the beast is also a function of what kind of overhead do you have? Do you have to keep doing deals in order to keep people employed? So right now in my development business, there are no other employees. There is nobody else. I'm kicking around lately, and I keep talking about it, but I'm going to do it, I think, in the next 12 months, to bring construction in-house for some smaller projects. But I mean, right now in my development business, there's no employees. So I don't have to keep doing deals to generate development fees, construction management fees to feed anyone. And that creates a significant level of freedom when it comes to choosing not to do deals. And it's a challenging environment to do deals. And this probably kind of segues us into costs, but it's a challenging time, and it's been a challenging time to do ground up deals because of costs and because of cost of money. And so even deals that make a lot of sense location wise right now and market wise, they're still tight deals. That's just a matter of fact. I was in some Facebook group this morning. I don't know how I end up there, but it's local people here in Richmond that like to bitch about stuff, and oftentimes the tone, sort of the topic of bitching, is that nobody builds high quality new construction anymore. Everybody builds apartments that these people think are architecturally inferior, finish inferior. They're tinder boxes. All of these people are apparently they're big experts, right? But fact is, it's incredibly challenging to pencil out ground up deals right now, even with code compliant construction, decent level finishes. People that don't understand this business, they look back at the shit that was built 60 years ago, full brick construction, wrought iron rails and ornamental works, solid brick walls, concrete. I mean, you can't do that. It is physically impossible to build those kind of buildings right now, because the costs of construction and cost of money, they're too high. They're too high. And so you have Class A buildings going up. Why is there no affordable construction happening unless it's government subsidized? Because it requires Class A rents, top of the market Class A rents, to pencil out construction costs and cost of money. And construction costs without doing anything fancy. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So like, we're in a very, and we've been in this very challenging environment for, I mean, ever since COVID, ever since before COVID, where ground up multifamily construction only makes sense in markets where you can generate top of the line Class A rents, and you can't even get fancy with your buildings in most markets.
I think people don't realize it's a math equation is all it is, right?
Sure.
It's a simple math equation. this is the cost of the land. This is the cost of the construction, the hard costs of it. This is the soft costs of construction, the engineering and the permitting and all those things. And then there's the cost of the capital. And when all of those things that were like this before, and now they've all ballooned to this much, the reality is you need top tier rents. And if rents aren't growing, you can't pay for that. And the only thing that can be built typically is luxury stuff that then yields those top tier rents. So it creates this constraint across affordable housing and workforce housing, which
Sure.
just doesn't exist anymore. You can't build workforce housing today because financially you can't make it make sense unless it's subsidized, to your point.
Yeah, and so you either have Class A or you have LIHTC, low income housing tax credits, and the stuff in between is not being built. Because if
Yep.
I'm trying to build C plus, B minus housing that commands C plus, B minus rents, but it's not subsidized, the rent roll is not high enough to justify the debt, to cover the debt that's required to build that building.
Yep.
And it's simply a math equation. It costs me this much to build. I can borrow this much against it, and to make up the difference, I need this much in equity, and that equity has to earn a rate of return. And if I'm not generating top of the market rents, that equity is not earning a high enough return to go into the project.
Right.
And so even
and
then,
you're not going to work for free, right? Ask somebody else to go to their job and not get a
Sure.
paycheck, right?
Yeah,
And own it for, and go to work for 5 years, not just the sourcing of the deal, but the building of the deal,
Yeah,
the
it
management
takes-
of the deal, because it's not going to cash flow until rents justify being able to
it
take
takes
on that
years.
build cost.
Yeah, it takes years. Yeah, and I'm certainly not a nonprofit, but in the multifamily development space, if you're putting your own cash to work right now, it takes time to start earning a real rate of return on it. And the alternative is you're just syndicating the equity and you're making money via fees, but that equity that you syndicate still has to earn a respectable rate of return. And so you've got people that look at these, sort of 4/1 buildings going up and saying, oh, the developer is cheap. He put hardy plank siding on the building. Well, guess what? On that same building, if you go from hardy plank to brick, it breaks the numbers. This
Yep.
brick is 3 times as expensive.
Yep.
And so people that don't understand this business, they're just like, oh, well, Tim is cheap. Well, no, Tim lives in the real world
Yeah.
where math rules.
Yep.
And
That's
and,
it.
and that's the reality of the situation. So we're in a very challenging time as a country because it's very hard to build housing.
So what are some strategies that you've implemented that have helped lower some of those costs? How have you been? I mean, how are you sourcing your materials? How have you worked on better negotiating your labor costs? It sounds like you bank land, so you own land for several years, let it kind of appreciate, so that way that becomes a valuable contribution into the down payments, and maybe you don't need as much investor principal or your own principal to be put into the deal, and the land can be the contribution for the down payment for the construction cost. That's
Correct.
Or for the construction loan, I'm sorry. But let's talk a little bit about that. How have you attacked material and supplies?
So a couple of things. One, even as kind of the size and scope of projects I'm working on is getting bigger, I still try to do a lot of the smaller, like my bread and butter has always been duplexes. If I can build nothing but duplexes in my business, I'll do it all day long because we can build duplexes by residential code. If I can build by residential building code, that drives my costs of construction down by $30 to $40 a foot minimum. Right?
Explain that. Explain why that's the case.
When I'm building by residential building code, I don't need a fire suppression system.
Yep.
I don't need a fire monitoring system. I don't need the additional fire line that I have to run from the street to support that sprinkler system. I don't have to engineer my drawings. If I'm building by residential code, I need baseline set of architectural plans, and I can go to permit, right? I can walk in with my electrician. I can say, hey, electrician, put some outlets here. Outlets have to be code compliant every 6 feet. So he already knows that. But I can say, put some light fixtures here, put some switches here. HVAC, I walk in with my HVAC guy. We say, okay, 2-zone system, X number of tons per zone, put registers here. If I'm building by commercial code, I need engineers to draw mechanical, electrical, plumbing drawings. I need a civil engineer. I need a structural engineer. My soft costs are going up $5 to $7 a foot, not including my hard construction costs.
Wow.
So it's just significantly cheaper to build by residential code.
I love it. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And so residential is anything 4 units and smaller, right?
It
By
varies.
code?
So state building code is different state to state. Here in Virginia, if I go from 2 units to 3, if I'm building a triplex, it now triggers commercial building code.
Okay. That's what I was going to ask of like in Ohio, and I think in South Carolina, it's 4 units in some of these other markets that I'm in. And so in those markets, it's like, well, if I'm building 2, I might as well just build 4, right? And just get as many as I can. But yeah, duplexes, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So if I've got a piece of land where I can maybe build a 10-unit apartment building, I'm going to look at that piece of land and say, can I break it up and maybe build 4 duplexes here? Can I break, if I've got a larger piece of land, maybe there's something I could do where I can break it up and build by residential code and build smaller buildings.
I like that.
For the second thing is, yes, in development world, there's 3 cost categories for the most part. It's land, cost of construction, and it's cost of money. I can't control cost of money. I can't control cost of construction without massively sacrificing on my finishes, right? And the quality of my projects. I typically don't go in that direction. So the only thing I can really control is the cost of land. So as a developer, you are really well served to get good at sourcing land cheap, below market value. Whether it's through, a good acquisition pipeline or through upzoning, right? So I've got a bunch of houses I bought recently from wholesalers that we're taking these single-family ranchers, we're demoing them. I'm getting the lots upzoned to where I can split the lots and build duplexes with ADUs in the back. So I'm buying a single-family home and I'm turning it into 6 units. So my cost of land per unit is now going down below market value. And I'm taking that land, because I'm buying these with cash, I'm paying 100, 150 grand for each rancher, basically. I'm taking that land and I'm bringing that land as equity to my lenders at full market value, which then allows me to get favorable construction financing and get a bigger chunk of my construction costs financed.
It's brilliant, man.
So you've got to get good at either sourcing land below market value or sourcing land at market value, but then upzoning it to where your land is now at a cost basis that's below market value. So
I love it.
Those are things you can't control. On the construction costs, we're getting more disciplined about going out to more contractors, more subcontractors, and getting everything bid, and just getting better at value engineering. We're doing more iterations of drawings and revisions to try to find, the question is always, how can I save money on this project without sacrificing the quality of the project? And that's not an easy, oftentimes, question to answer. It's very easy to say, well, yeah, man, let's get rid of granite countertops and put, I don't know what the fuck, like Formica or what. I haven't used anything but quartz and granite.
Yeah, what do you use other than stone anymore?
I mean, I don't know, right? But it's very easy to say, let's get rid of hardwood floors or LVP and put carpet down. That's easy value engineering. Yeah, I'm saving money, but I'm also undercutting my rents because I've just decreased the quality of my project.
It increases your long-term maintenance costs too.
Sure. Yeah. So the trick is always, how can I save money without making the project worse?
This episode of the Legacy Podcast is brought to you by the Legacy Boardroom Mastermind. So our goal is to give as much free information away as humanly possible through all of our social media platforms and try to help people with their businesses, help people with their lives. We also have something for people who want more one-on-one attention, which is Legacy Boardroom. Legacy Boardroom is a board of directors for your business. If you are doing up to about $10 million a year in gross revenue, you're making some money, you got some good things happening, but maybe you can't afford a C-suite of executives, of a chief marketing officer, a chief operating officer, a chief investment officer, a chief human resources officer, and you need access to these fractional C-suite executives. That's what this was built for, at a fraction of the price of what you can find anywhere else in the marketplace. So it's my actual team who have built multiple 7 and 8 and 9-figure businesses and real estate portfolios that is available every single day of the week on these daily boardroom calls. So any questions that you have, you can hop on, ask questions about operations to my COO, ask questions about acquisitions to my CMO, ask questions about raising private money to my chief investment officer, or team building to my chief HR officer. So they're available for you 5 days a week. Any questions that you have, any hurdles that you're facing, anything that you need, these guys are available to help you break through any sort of barriers and take your business to the next level, so that way you can build a business that is designed to feed your life and your lifestyle. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more, check out legacyboardroom.com.
So the question, when you ask that question, what comes to my mind is, putting all the plumbing on the same wall, right? So you don't have plumbing all over the place. How can we stack the kitchens with the bathrooms with everything all in one place, so that way you need less plumbing? Or I don't know, maybe it's fishing the electric somehow, or maybe it's, I don't know, whatever else that looks like. What are some things that you guys have done from an engineering standpoint and architectural design standpoint in order to do that?
Getting more efficient with unit layouts, right? So one thing I focus on a lot working together with the architect is, how can we lay out these apartments and minimize hallway space in each apartment? Because that's money I'm spending towards construction that's not really generating additional rents, right? So we're always looking at our unit layouts within the building and saying, how can these unit layouts be more efficient without, again, sacrificing kind of the livable square footage? What are the biggest cost categories in the building? It's going to be site work, it's going to be framing, it's going to be trades. So can I go out to more, let's say, HVAC contractors and find somebody that can do the same quality job but save us a little money here? I mean, it's really project dependent. Like what can you do in terms of value engineering? I just this morning got done going over with my architect, where we have a masonry kind of accent wall going in the front elevation, but then in the third value engineering iteration, I noticed that there's also masonry going around the first floor on the side elevations. And so we're getting rid of masonry there, replacing it with siding. The building is still going to be beautiful because it's got a main elevation that you can see from the street that's going to be brick, but we're going to save money by getting rid of brick on secondary kind of rear elevation where nobody's really going to notice it. So that's gonna save me tens of thousands of dollars. So sometimes it's picking your battles, right?
Yep.
If I want to give somebody a great apartment, maybe I'm not going to give them a beautiful tiled shower and a beautiful kitchen at the same time. Maybe I'm going to pick my battles and say, okay, most of the time my tenants are going to be in the apartment. They're going to be in their kitchen. They're going to be in their living space. So let's make the kitchen really nice. Let's make sure that everybody gets a peninsula or an island, because that's where they're going to entertain. And then let's get some savings and generate those savings in the bathroom, where I'm going to give them a single piece fiberglass tub and surround, which is what we do almost in every apartment. And nobody gives a shit.
Dude, nobody cares. Nobody cares.
It's
just, dude, it's more cleanup and stuff on tile and all the other things in a bathroom. It's
easy to
gotta
clean.
remortar it and
Easy to clean, low maintenance, and it's just where they take a shower. But most of their time is going to be spent in the kitchen. So we're gonna pick our battles, right? Because I can't make everything beautiful. I'm gonna take a couple of focal points, just like when you're building a house to sell, right? There's always going to be a couple of wow factors that you focus on. Same thing.
Man, I love it. There's a lot of really good nuggets in this conversation. So let's talk about the other aspect, that third one, which is the cost of capital. Can't really control cost of capital unless you're using private money, and you can raise private money for lower than what the bank can fund something for. Kind of tough to do.
Yeah.
I I would say probably the best way to reduce cost of capital is to reduce the timeline of the building
Yes.
process, right? So that
Yes.
way you're utilizing this higher cost of capital for a lesser amount of time and getting it stabilized, getting it rented out, and being able to put, you know, fixed rate debt at a lower interest rate on it sooner is going to be able to reduce that capital cost. How are you guys able to
100%.
expedite that process?
So a couple of things are really important. One, we beat the living shit out of the drawings before we go to permit. I mean, we just destroy them, right? And by we, I really mean like a good general contractor will do that.
Yeah.
The better you can review the drawings before you go to permit, the faster your project will go. It seems very simple, but like, I don't know, back in the day, my MO was like, just fucking submit it, we'll figure it out as we go. And sure, you can get away with it in smaller projects, but in larger projects, during construction, every time a discrepancy is found in the drawings, every time a subcontractor has a question in the middle of a job, the job stops.
It does,
And
man.
best case scenario, it's a day. Worst case scenario, you have to submit like a revision, and then it's a month, right? So that's honestly number one.
And the beauty of that,
tip.
it's within your control. You know, it's just don't get lazy and don't get trigger happy. Just like review and review and review. It's like sharpening the axe before you go to cut down the tree, man.
I'm
Spend
not paying
twice as much time on
interest.
this.
If I take an extra month to review the drawings, it's not really costing me anything because I'm not paying interest on construction yet. If I spend that same month fixing the drawings during construction where I've already drawn $5 million of a construction loan, it's costing me tens of thousands of dollars, right? So that's something we've gotten better at, right? Before I go to permit, I will make sure the drawings are really thoroughly checked, and not just individual drawings, but how architectural coordinates with civil coordinates with plumbing, trades. You know, everything has to line up. So that's one. Two, getting better at pre-leasing, because that's the other phase of the project. If your project gets executed on time, right?
Yep.
That's the other big factor that can drive up your cost of money. How long does it take you to pre-lease the building and stabilize it to where the rents are now covering the debt? And that can really make or break you. A slow lease up, part of it is you trying to time the market, right? Because if you are starting and the building that we're finishing now, it's a 40-unit building, but we started pre-leasing it kind of in early January, and it's slow. It's crickets. Nobody's looking in January, right? So I mean, part of it is you could try to time when you start the project so that you're bringing it to market during the busy leasing season, but oftentimes that's not possible.
Hard to navigate. Yeah.
It's hard. Yeah. It's hard to do. So then how effective are we at marketing and pre-leasing in my management company to get the units leased up as fast as possible? And that's, you know, kind of a continuous process of improvement. Where are we marketing, and how are we marketing, and how are we holding open houses? How are we getting, you know, how are we using social media to generate interest? You know, are we getting referral traffic? What online sites are we using? You know, we're everywhere now, right? We never used to use apartments.com, but now we're paying them for their highest
It's expensive,
tier.
man. We don't like paying them either, but we do it.
We're paying them for their highest tier service, because with you know, the extra couple of $100 a month I'm going to spend with them, even if that generates me one new lease, it's well worth it. So yeah, it's honestly, it's what happens before you put a shovel in the ground, and it's what happens once you're ready to lease these apartments up. That can massively drive up or decrease your cost of capital.
It's great nuggets. How about, have you guys looked into midterm rentals at all? Are you guys doing any sort of corporate housing, reaching out to local businesses that have, you know, the hospital has traveling nurses coming in, or some other business that is bringing in clients or bringing on, you know, part-time employees for training, stuff like that?
We're doing short-term rentals selectively in a couple of projects, and it's really kind of a tool in a tool belt to juice up NOI.
Right.
Very specific buildings. I don't do midterm rentals because the way our numbers work, unless I'm getting $150 a night on a short-term rental, it's
Mhm.
not worth it. I might as well just make it a long-term rental. Like the
Mhm.
midterm numbers don't really, you know, for a one bedroom that leases at $1,600 a month, right? As a long-term rental, I need to be able to get $150 a night, 20 nights a week to justify running that as a short-term rental. Otherwise, I might as well, because by the time I take out, I mean, do the math, right? 20
Yeah,
times
cleaning
150,
costs. Yep.
20 times
Utilities.
150 is $3,000 minus 20% management fee, right? I'm not a math wizard, but 20% of $3,000 is $600.
Yep.
So $3,000, take out $600 management fee that my in-house company charges. I'm now at 2,400. 2,400 minus Netflix, utilities, the wine that we give them, tchotchkes. It's a couple of $100, right? Now I'm down to like 22, 2,100. Now I'm making some kind of a spread between that 1,600 and 21. And that
Mhm.
spread is now a rate of return on the additional money that I spent to turn those into Airbnb units. So if I'm not getting $150 a night, it's not worth the effort. But when I list something on like Furnished Finder at $3,000 a month for nurses, it doesn't work because a single nurse doesn't want to pay $3,000 a month,
Mhm.
right? So my one bedroom, it doesn't really work as a mid. We found that our smaller units don't work as midterm rentals
Mhm.
because the price point that we need to achieve per month, it just doesn't work for those people. So that
Makes
was a
sense, man.
super
Again, it
super
goes
long
back to being a
answer
math
to
equation.
that's all it is. It's and it's a math equation that you really have to think through because everybody says, well, yeah, if my long-term rental rate is 1,600, but I can get double that, it's a home run
Mhm.
but it's not because you've got all these additional costs that come out when you're running these as MTRs or SDRs.
Yeah, I mean, some of our short-term rentals, we actually pay the cleaning fee. Other ones, the tenant pays the cleaning fee. And
Mm.
on paper, you're looking at gross revenue, and you're like, when you start knocking out all the expenses of the added utilities and maintenance and cleanup and all this other stuff, it's like, man, we're barely doing
Yeah.
better. We're still doing better, but is it worth
Is
the
it worth
additional
the headache?
headaches?
Yeah. I mean, I always say we spend the same amount of time managing a single short-term rental unit as we probably spend managing 20 long-term rentals.
Mhm.
That's how high touch it
That
is.
is, I think that's even the greater expense that we're talking about.
Yeah, it's the people expense,
Yep.
right? So I don't view that business as scalable whatsoever, not with my in-house people.
Mhm.
I'd much rather
Do you
scale.
own the in-house management?
Yes,
Okay, so you could charge a lower fee if you wanted to, depending on how your comp plan is with your leasing agents and property managers.
I could charge a lower fee, but again, there's opportunity cost because
You're
if my
taking money,
in-house
yeah.
people are so busy managing these short-term rentals, they're spending less time on my long-term rentals. And so
Mhm.
we need to charge a significant management fee because there's a real opportunity cost from that comes out of the rest of the units.
Yep.
And
No, I agree.
20%, like if I was doing third-party management, Airbnbs, I wouldn't charge anything less than 25. But it's a lot of work.
Yep.
I mean, the girl on my team who manages our short-term rental units, I mean, like she works her ass off and she's answering people in the evenings, on the weekends.
You got
I
to.
mean, she's constantly on call. She's answering people right away. She has a checklist that she takes, and every time our cleaners turn a unit, she goes, cleaners have a checklist, but then every time our cleaners turn the unit, she physically goes out to those units and walks them with her own checklist to make sure
Mhm.
the cleaners didn't miss anything. And that's how we ensure we have nothing but 5-star reviews because there's 2 sets of eyes on every apartment before somebody checks in. but it's incredibly time intensive.
Yep. I agree. I
So we
agree.
have like 15 of these now. I can't see us scaling to past 25 max.
Yeah. Now, I feel the same way about short-term rentals. I have a couple of them that I use that I purchased because I want to be able to use them myself. But I just don't like managing short-term rentals. I don't think it's scalable, and I think it's a pretty tough business because it's 24 hours. It's you're working when everybody else doesn't want to be working. You know, like it's weekends,
Yeah.
it's nights, it's holidays, it's
Well,
and that's when people are engaging on Airbnb and VRBO and
mhm.
asking the questions and all that stuff. And like you got to be on all the time, man. It's a tough business to be in.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's sort of the completely antithesis to why we got into holding property to begin with, right?
Right?
Like,
Great point.
it's not the business model that I got into this business for. And
Yep.
and I want a certain quality of life for my people too. Like, I don't have to deal with Airbnb issues on evenings and weekends, but at the same time, like, I don't want people that work for me to be going crazy either. So yeah,
I
it's
agree.
not something I can see us scaling very far.
Do you see anything changing gears a little bit from a standpoint of going back to this affordable housing thing and the constraints with affordable housing and workforce housing? Do you think that just keeps on bending, bending, bending? Does it eventually break? Are there other government interventions that are going to happen? I mean, we're 4.5 million housing units short in the United States today. And that number continues to grow by 1 million units per year. And the only things that are being built, to your point earlier, are luxury type of units. Or LIHTC, which has a constraint on it for 15 years, and an income constraint for low income housing.
Mhm.
So like what happens to the workforce? What happens to the marketplace over the course of the next 5 years until something bends, something breaks? Maybe interest rates come down. I don't see labor costs coming down. I don't see material
Mm-mm.
costs coming down.
No.
I really don't see interest rates coming down for a while either, unless there's some massive economic issue where unemployment skyrockets and the economy collapses, which then we have bigger issues anyways. But like, what do you see as a solution to the affordable housing shortage that's in the country right now?
I don't see any incremental solutions that will make a real difference, right? So first of all, let's talk about the points that you made. Labor prices are generally sticky unless we have just a huge recession, right?
Mm-hmm.
So labor is not going down. Material costs are not going down, and given what's going on and that certainty with tariffs right now, good luck, right? No, nothing's coming down. If anything, things are going to escalate in the next 6 months. I don't know. It's not clear. The tariff policy changes every single day, so who the hell knows? Interest rates, until inflation is contained, which again, tariffs are making everybody really nervous about inflation being sticky. Interest rates likely will not come down either. I think it's hilarious that like Trump keeps trying to bully Powell into dropping rates, and that's, he did that successfully in 2016 when Fed should have been raising. Trump came in and was like, cut it, and they did, and real estate did great, but like in hindsight, they probably should have been raising at that point. So no, I don't think rates are coming down, and I think we're in a very precarious situation as a country because not enough housing is being built, and even less is going to get built. We have a shortage. You've got, starter homes aren't really a thing anymore. People in their 20s can't afford to buy their first house. I read somewhere that the average age of a first-time home buyer is now 37 years old,
Wow.
right? So like if you consider the American dream still to involve buying a home, that American dream is becoming more and more elusive for more and more people. They're all being pushed towards the rental market, but the only thing being built in the rental market is the Class A stuff that,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like our 2 bedrooms now are $2,200, and we're kind of in the mid-tier market. We have to charge that, otherwise we can't even build. But there's only
So,
a small
so you
sector
can,
of people that can afford those rents. And
I mean, do
so,
the math on it, right? Like typically you want the take home pay of your tenants to be 3
yes,
times the
after
monthly
tax,
rental rate. So
after
that
tax.
means after taxes, somebody's got to be making $65,000 to $7,000 a month
Yes,
after tax, which means they got to be 6 figures or above, you know?
correct, correct. So where is everybody else living? So a lot of them are being channeled to sort of the Class B and Class C housing, older properties. Okay,
Mhm.
that's fine, but there's a finite supply of that stuff as well. I just I don't see any real solutions short of something drastic. Maybe when it comes to construction methods, right? I mean, like, what happened to 3D printing? Something seriously drastic needs to happen that completely revolutionizes some part of the equation: cost of land, cost of construction, or cost of money, right? And so on the cost of construction front, we're building the same way we've been building for 60, 70, 80 years, right? So
Mhm.
maybe in the next 10 years, modular becomes much more cost effective. Right now, it saves you some
Hey,
time.
man.
It doesn't really save you money,
Nope.
right? Maybe 3D printing becomes more advanced and widespread. Like, there needs to be a serious disruption, because if you don't disrupt the cost of construction, how do you disrupt the cost of land? There's zoning reform being pushed throughout the country that's kind of driving sort of this need for more missing middle housing, right? So duplexes by right on single family lots, ADUs by right, that helps. That's allowing more housing to be created, but it's not millions of units.
Yep.
And when zoning reform gets pushed out, the interesting part of that is, and I think it gets lost in a lot of these conversations, because zoning reform gets pushed as a way to make housing more affordable, to allow more housing to be created. But from what I've seen, zoning reform benefits the landowners. If I have a piece of land and it's entitled for a single family home, and now all of a sudden it's entitled for a duplex with an ADU in the back, the person that benefits from that zoning reform is the guy that already owns the land.
Mhm.
And so now if I'm going to sell it to a developer, I'm going to sell it for more money.
Which means they have to charge more than rent.
Yeah. And
Until you get to a point where supply catches up with demand, right? That which we're so far behind. Like
we're
none of these developers have been banking land over the past 3 years. Nobody's been taking out new loans. They're all underwater on existing deals, right? Like they're trying to figure out their current situation, let alone take on new projects. There's very few who fall into the category that you're in of, I've been banking land for 5 years. I have plenty of land. I don't need to go out and buy new stuff. Like, and you've been very patient and very um, calculated in your approach. And most, I would say, do not fall into that category. I have seen local governments giving grants for the purchase of land with a caveat of it's got to be meet some sort of income restriction. Where it's like, hey, if as long as you're below 80% of AMI, then
yeah.
then yeah, hey, we're going to give you X number of dollars to buy the land. It doesn't
There,
move the needle enough, though.
there are unique cases where if you take the aggregate of those unique cases, you start getting tens of thousands of units, right? So I've got a buddy in Philly who at scale builds affordable single family houses because Philly gives him the land for free. And then Philly also has a grant that they give to the home buyer that covers their full down payment. And so he's able to sell houses. And I don't know, don't quote me on this. It's been a while since we talked, but just as an example, right? A house that normally at market value would sell in the 500s, he's able to sell in the 300s and
Mhm.
still in his business make a mildly respectable profit just to keep his operation going for his construction company and his development company. But I mean, look at the subsidies, right? He's got to get the land for free. He's got to get, the home buyers are getting a significant grant from the government. Well, that's all taxpayer money. So
Yep.
it's a good thing because teachers and firefighters are able to buy homes that they otherwise would not afford in the areas where they serve, which is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But how scalable is it? Because that money, when that teacher is getting a house for 350 grand instead of 550 grand, that delta is coming from somewhere. It didn't just appear out of thin air, right? It's that money has to come
Yeah.
from somewhere. And so how scalable is that? I think it helps, right?
Do you think they go to 40-year mortgages, 50-year mortgages? If you
Yeah,
got a 50-year
yeah,
mortgage, you might as well just rent your whole life. It's like,
yeah. I mean,
why would you even
that's the thing,
want
right?
that?
You don't amortize even on a 30-year mortgage. You don't amortize anything in the first 10 years, right?
Exactly.
It's kind of a joke. So 40, 50-year mortgages will make it more affordable for people to get in. But yeah, they won't, through amortization, they won't build any significant wealth for like 20 years.
Yeah. Banks just get richer.
Yeah. So there needs to be a serious disruption. Until
I
then, again,
agree.
kind of in my business, we're finding a lot of success doing smaller deals, building by residential code, being creative with how we upzone density in specific locations. Because if I can if I can go through the upzoning process myself, then I get the benefit of that upzoning process, not the landowner, and I can pass through some of that benefit to our tenants and to our buyers, right? Whereas if the land is already zoned and I'm forced to pay the higher value for it, then I have to pass that through. So we're finding success with strategies that really revolve around sort of, smaller deals, creative zoning, and we're making the numbers work. But to solve this at a national level, I mean, people far smarter than me have been trying to and have been at it for a long time. And I mean, it's a tough one. And
Well, man, I think, what you found and what you're doing in the small multifamily space is where there's a huge opportunity over the next 5 years. I think exactly where you are is exactly where you should be, and
yeah,
where there's going to be big opportunity across the whole country. And I think people getting into these 2 to 4 units makes it now where someone can go in, live in one side and house hack, right? And rent out the other side. So even though they can't afford $400,000, they got a tenant paying them $1,500 a month in the other unit. They can come in and pay the other $1,500. Now all of a sudden it kind of balances out. Now they can become a homeowner. I can see
yeah.
that happening in 2 units, 3 units, and 4 units, because that's, in a lot of markets, that's where the financing can come in from a residential standpoint. And I think there's going to keep on being demand for the small multi, because
Yeah.
people don't want to live in a big apartment complex. They want something, if they can't afford a home, they want something that feels more like a home. And a duplex, triplex, or like a townhome, something like that, meets that criteria as good as anything else.
Yeah. No question.
Yeah. So awesome, man. Well, hey, so many good nuggets, so many great takeaways. I love seeing what you're doing. I love having a conversation with you. You're always very level-headed. Here's what's going on. Here's what I'm doing. You don't get too emotional over any of that stuff. And you're very creative in your processes, and you're always willing to share. So, man,
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you being here, brother.
Yeah.
And next time you're in Charleston, let's match up.
No elevators.
No elevators. Hey, what's the best place for people to catch you at, by the way?
You can find me on YouTube. I have a lot of content on YouTube. If you look
Tons of
for
content, lots of really good stuff.
if you look for Rehab Valuator or just search for my name, we have a YouTube channel with a ton of content and development. We have a free version of our software that you can sign up for if you're flipping houses or developing at rehabvaluator.com. And then you start getting emails from me, and you can just reply to those emails. And I typically will see those replies as well. I'm on Instagram as well at rehabvaluator. Is the IG handle also.
Awesome. We'll tag you in everything and
Okay.
make sure that we're collabing on social media posts and all that stuff. So, brother,
Sounds good.
appreciate
Yeah.
you, man. Thank you for being here. See you soon.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Hey, well, thank you for being here. Hopefully you got a ton of great value out of this episode. You know, we try to give as much free value as possible across all of our social media platforms. So please make sure that you're connected with us. We are at Legacy Wealth on YouTube. We are at Tim Bratz on all other social media platforms. And we're available anywhere that you listen to podcasts. The best way that you can support this podcast is by just subscribing to our YouTube channel, by liking the video, by commenting on it, and by sharing it with anyone else who might get some great value out of it. So thank you again for being here. We'll see you next Sunday on the Legacy Podcast.